Our guest for today's episode is Gaana Srinivas. She has completed her master's in interaction design at CIID Copenhagen. She has previously worked at Amazon and is currently working as a founding designer at Rune. I am Mayank Khandelwal and you are listening to Whiteboard.fm. Gaana, can you tell us more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Gaana Srinivas, and I am I'm a product designer, an interaction designer. I do a little bit of everything, and I currently work at Rune. We're a gaming adjacent startup based out of San Francisco, and I am the founding designer there. I've been working with them for some time, and I'm a graduate of the Copenhagen Institute of Interaction Design here in lovely Copenhagen, where I am. Although it looks like I'm in a jungle.
Nice. So Gaana, can you tell us more about how did you get started in design?
For sure. So I studied communications and media in college, and it was a little bit of marketing, a little bit of video production, all of that. And we had one course on web design, and I thought it was interesting, but I didn't think much of it. So after college, I was kind of confused as to what I wanted to do. So I joined a digital marketing company where I was doing, well, just that. But I hated it. I hated it so goddamn much. And I had all of these skills that were around media, and I was just wondering, how could I do what I loved and get paid for it at the same time? And luckily, a senior of mine from school got in touch with me, and he was like, hey, I have a company, and we're looking for designers. I know that you've always had an interest in it in school and in college. Would you maybe want to join us? And I said yes, even though I didn't have any idea, what the job would mean. I just read every article I could. I just watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I kind of just made it happen that way. And it's been just great ever since. I don't think there's anything else I would rather be doing as a career, except maybe being like a food taster on Travel and Living or whatever. But I guess that's just a fantasy that everyone has and materializes only for a few.
That's great. So Gaana, like you mentioned, you started off by studying in a communications and media program, and then you were a self-taught product designer, if I could say. So what made you decide that you want to move and enter the program at design college?
Well, the thing is about being self-taught, or at least the way it was for me, is that you only end up kind of doing the design that the industry wants you to do. And in India especially, I felt that there was a lot of demand for UI and UX, which is awesome. And that's how I make my money today. But I thought, there's got to be more. There's got to be like interesting things. Of course, I love working with AR. I love working with sound. So these are the kinds of things that I wanted to figure out how to learn without, forcing myself into just doing the same struggle that I had with UI UX, because it wasn't necessary for me to go through all that hardship again if there was a way for me to network, have a great college experience, get that, line on my resume that says I have a master's. And so it just made sense to try for a few places that didn't take me out of the market, because I didn't want to take a course that was a 2-year, incredibly academic course. And that's why CIID made a lot of sense for me, because it was a 1-year course that is highly influenced by the industry and is taught by a lot of industry professionals.
Nice. Can you tell us more about the CIID program in terms of the teaching and the process that is there?
Sure. So CIID as an institution actually has a consultancy. They also have summer school, and then they have the 1-year interaction design program. And they admit a maximum of 24 students a year. Oh, and it is yeah, it's pretty tight, and they sort of select people from varied backgrounds. So you have people who are, from film, people who are, traditional product designers, but we also had people who were lawyers, people who are government servants who wanted to understand design thinking, the way that like sort of IDEO and institutions like that do design thinking. And we have courses that are broken up into modules, often of 1 or 2 weeks in length. So we never spend more than that amount of time really getting to know something. And it's always taught by people in the industry. So I learned, for example, I learned Unity from the head of product and UX at Oculus. So it was a really great experience because you don't just learn, you're not 2 steps behind industry. You're right there at the front lines. And being self-taught, it was always important what everyone out there is doing. It didn't matter so much to me what the theory of the printing press was. It doesn't make sense. It's not useful. It doesn't pay the bills. So I think CIID in that way really stands out as a wonderful course. The first part of the year goes into learning. The second part is putting it into practice. And the final part is the 3-month thesis module, where you figure out what you're interested in and you try to make something that is then that you then have to defend in front of a panel of judges.
Nice. Can you tell us more about what that kind of process is, your thesis project, that when it comes to presenting it to the panel?
Sure. So the thesis presentation is a culmination of 3 months of work, from figuring out what exactly you're interested in doing, to going through the people-centered research process, to co-creating with your users, to finally putting the design all together and presenting, a finished product or whatever it is that you wanted to get out of it. In fact, you can't really fail. You can't fail because it's never the point. You're not trying to create a perfect object. It's simply a showcase of what you've learned through doing this thesis project, how you applied your learnings from the year to this. So it is a 20-minute presentation accompanied by a demo usually, and then a Q&A with these panelists. We had Ailey Dixon, who is an alum of CIID, who was on the panel. We had Dan Hill, and we had Jacek Barsikowski, who works with the BBC. And they're all friends of the house. They're all very prolific in their own fields and gave us a lot of great feedback and insight that continues to inform a lot of what I do today.
So Gaana, like you mentioned, the CIID program is very different since like to explain the program that you guys work on multiple aspects every 2 weeks. So basically what I'm trying to ask is how is the program at CIID different from the majority of design college programs?
Right. So there is a few things. I would say one is definitely the length, and by extension, the intensity. It's a studio work environment. So you are always working in groups. You're always working in teams, and that's something that they stress very highly because, according to them, like for most people, when they actually do design out in the real world, they're not going to be like, they're not lone wolves. We all have to work with the people who bring our designs to life or who actually execute them. And so they prioritize teamwork and group work above a lot of things. Another thing is that every Friday we have to present. So everyone who is in the house, from the consultancy or externals, they come in and we have to get up in front of them and present our work to them, because the very strong philosophy at CIID is that your work is not useful unless you can communicate it well. You could have done the most amazing project in the world, but if people don't see the value in what you've done, there's very little use it can have. So we had to get comfortable speaking about our work in front of crowds. And maybe the last thing is that it's partnered with the United Nations, and the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals is one of the principles that drives a lot of the design that we do. So whenever we have a course, we always have to try to look at things through the lens of sustainability, through the lens of bias, through the lens of just trying to create a better world than what we're currently in through the power of design, rather than looking at it through a strictly commercial lens, which is exactly what I was looking for. Because as designers, we have a responsibility for what we put out into the world, and to acknowledge that power and try your hardest to make something that's good and that is more positive than negative, I think is important, but something that CID really drives home.
Nice. That's that's amazing actually. Like the kind of breadth and depth that's applied, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think that maybe the one thing, the misconception that some people have is that you're going to get into this course and you're going to become like the most amazing UI UX designer, like the most amazing, most qualified product designer, and that you're going to get a super cool job at like Frog or IDEO or any, insert name of company here. I don't think that CID is going to let you do that. What it allows you to do is get a taste for what the possibilities in each of these fields are. So when I came into CID as a product designer, I don't necessarily feel like my strictly UI UX skills improved as a result of this course. What definitely improved was my ability to communicate and my ability to collaborate and just the general approach that I have. So the skills are awesome. Like to be able to learn Unity and to create VR experiences like through my phone was freaking sick. But does that mean that I can get a job, at a game development company later? Not necessarily, not yet. But at least I know how to get my foot in the door. Just in terms of, hey, I'm interested in this. I'll learn more. I'll figure it out. So I hope that no one conflates the two in their heads, because that's the thing that a lot of people have been facing. The people who have graduated recently. I thought that being at CID would open a lot more doors than it currently has. It does, because the community is cool, but you have to put in the work afterwards.
For sure. Gaana, what is a typical week for you at CIID?
Yeah. So on Monday mornings for a 1 week module, like for example, we learned processing. So processing is like a language that allows artists to make generative art in a very basic way. And we want, that was like our introduction to programming as designers. So that's like a 1 week module. So on Monday morning, we would have a team breakfast at 9 a.m. and we would meet our instructors for the week. And they're always different, they're always changing. And we would be sort of briefed as to what would happen. And they usually don't tell us what's coming next because they don't want anyone to come in with any preconceived notions of what's going to happen. So you'd come in, you'd have breakfast, you'd meet everybody, and then you'd get the outline for the week. And after you get this outline, you are, usually you're split into teams, and you're gonna be like, okay, this is gonna be your team for the week. You're gonna have a learning phase, and then you're gonna have something that you need to present on Friday. And so through the week, you work in the studio environment. We're usually in by about 9, and I would like almost sleep there. But but usually we're there until officially 5 or 6 in the evening, and that would be the case Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday we would present at around 2 p.m. to internal and external people. Yeah,
That's super intensive, but super exciting.
Yeah, it was actually really challenging for me because I was also freelancing at the time, which is unheard of, and technically you're not supposed to do that.
Oh, okay.
They specifically tell you that you're not supposed to work part-time or consult because the course is quite intense. But I mean, I had a lot to gain from trying to balance the two. So after the year was over, I basically just slept for a month.
Nice. So while you were freelancing, did you feel that you were implementing those learnings and that changed in how you were working before the CIID program and after the CIID program, or during in your freelance work? Like what kind of changes did you observe?
Definitely. I think that there were some changes in terms of, I guess the CID process focuses on all aspects of the design sort of lifetime, from, research and thinking about concept to like execution and delivery and presentation. Although the consulting work I was doing was primarily, motion graphics, video, and UI UX, it affected the way that I didn't dismiss ideas. I think that that was my biggest learning, to keep an open mind in the beginning and
Right.
to not immediately jump into problem solving mode as it's very convenient to do, but as often, but that's also it's also something that companies don't mind that you do. At least the ones that I'd worked with in India, they didn't care that you took certain leaps as a designer with experience to get to the conclusion, so long as the conclusion did perform. But how do you know what'll work if you don't entertain all the options? So
Right.
open-minded brainstorming, I think, was one of my biggest personal learnings from CIID that I definitely do use every day at work.
Nice. Can you tell us how someone can apply and be a part of the program at CIID?
For sure. So there are things that I think listeners would need to know at this point, which is that the IDP program in Copenhagen is no longer there.
Yeah.
The thing is, the the Danish government has a quota for certain educational institutions by which they can allow international students to come in, and that arrangement is no longer valid. So what we do have, fortunately, is the IDP program in Costa Rica, where there are lots of Indians, some friends of people that we know, actually,
Oh,
who
nice.
are currently in Costa Rica doing the course. I think it's so cool. They get to do biomimicry in the jungle with the amazing Rebecca Mora, and she's just great. And it's a different experience, but I think an equally valid one, and one that's highly informed by sustainability and the kind of environment that these students get to learn in. They sort of alternate between being in the city and being in the jungle. It's great. I think it's cool. I would love to visit.
Nice. So Ghana, let's talk about your design journey post CIID. That you're currently working at Rune, right? So can you tell us more
Yes.
about your work at Rune?
Sure. So what's interesting about Rune is I said earlier how a senior of mine from school gave me my first design job. Yeah, so he then later went to MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, not Manipal, sorry. Um, and the thing is that he just got in touch with me saying, hey, me and a co-founder of mine want to start a company. This was in 2018 when I was at Amazon. And he's like, hey, we have a company where we need a designer. Are you in? And I said, of course. Like, not only do I have prior experience with you, like, I had a positive experience with you, and I would love to continue to do this. So when I was at Amazon, I was kind of working 1.5 jobs the whole time. And the company is Rune. Rune helps mobile gamers find people to play with, and offers like crystal clear voice chat. It's just like really, really, I don't know how they did it, but like every call on Rune is just quality. So the co-founders are Sanjay Guru Prasad and Bjaga Felbo. And Bjaga Felbo is a Dane, actually. He's Danish. So, which is like a fun little coincidence
Yeah.
if you think about it. Yeah, and we were in the Y Combinator winter batch of 2019, and we raised a couple million through that from as a seed, and we are currently a team of 5 people, and we have like 5,000 ratings on the App Store, et cetera, 5,000 5-star reviews on the App Store, et cetera, and it's just like a lot of fun. I do everything that is design at Rune, as well as I'm currently moving into growth as well. So, you know, we have a lot of collaborations with YouTubers. Spanish-speaking YouTubers, for some reason, really love our app. So we do that, and I make videos for them. I manage the social handles. I, you know, have all the growth-related marketing jargon words going on.
Right.
And of course, I do the app design and the website and any other requirement that comes in.
Awesome. Uh, Ghana, like you mentioned, you're a part of growth as well, right? So how do you feel growth helps in elevating someone's design work or their product design thinking?
When you say growth elevating design thinking, I'm not sure what you mean, because I'm in growth in the in the sense of we want to try to increase our social media presence as a company to get more users and to get more installs.
Sure. I mean, growth in terms of, like, for example, when we are trying to get, let's take NPS, for example, when we're trying to improve NPS on any particular metric while designing as a product designer. And when, if we have a general knowledge about growth and if we have experience in growing products and building them, if, like, how does it help? Or is it any, are there any learnings which can be implemented in design?
For sure. I think that if you think of yourself as a designer who all you do is create screens, you're not going to get very far. And the way that those 10 months of digital marketing helped me is crazy. Because as soon as you start thinking, how do I make my work better? It's going to be like, I know how it works. I know how Facebook paid ads work. I know how this works. I know the kind of keywords that work in there. And personally, I don't find that work to be exciting, but I find it to be important. So as a person who's managing everything that comes under the umbrella of design, which includes communications, it's important. Like, it's gonna move metrics. It's gonna give you leverage to argue your points and move developers to implement something that you know is important, but they might not, because numbers speak louder than words, I think. And and having an idea of different sort of peripheral domains around design, I think, is very important, and that goes for engineering as well. I have a fine arts background, right? I'm not a developer by any means, but when I know how HTML works, I know how apps are constructed. I know the logic, but I don't know the syntax, and that means that I can speak the developer's language and get my point across. So in just that way, as much as you can learn that's outside of design that feeds into your design, I think the better.
And what are some of the fields which you would recommend a product designer can learn to elevate their game?
Okay, one of them is definitely a little bit of marketing. It isn't something that we think is like pretty or cool. I certainly had that aversion to it in the beginning, but you need to know how your work is being perceived, because no one's going to look at it until you bring it in front of their eyes.
For sure.
Another sort of skill that I picked up was I interned at Lintas in college, and that was in advertising and copy. So one of the things that I stressed when I worked at the company Fresh Menu was I went through the micro copy with a fine-tooth comb, because not a lot of people think about the impact that a certain phrase might have, or the way that something is worded really affects the way people perceive your product. But a strong writing background means that you're able to just communicate that much more clearly, both through visuals and through words. And I think finally, just aesthetics in general. Like, obviously every designer has an aesthetic, but to look at inspiration in like packaging design or, you know, game design or anything like that just helps us figure out possibilities that we would not necessarily have considered in the vertical in which we work.
Makes a lot of sense. Can you give us a walkthrough of some of the projects at CIID? Especially your project Vox, which was a thesis project.
Yeah, Project Vox was, I think, a real passion project of mine, because, you know, I went to an all-girls media and communication studies college where gender and the discourse around equality was a big part of my experience. And as like a woman of color operating in the world, you don't really get away from that. And, you know, we all have our Siris and our Alexas and our Google Assistants, and, you know, we talk to them, and, you know, sometimes they don't understand us. I have accent privilege because I have an American accent that is more easily understood. It's not fair or right or good that people who are not, that don't have white names or have American accents have a shittier experience with voice assistant. It just isn't right. And one could argue that an advancement in this technology could eventually make it so that everyone's understood, but we're never truly going to get there. And I think that designing the end user experience that allows people to help themselves is a much better way to do it, because not everyone needs to be understood by your assistant. You do. You should be able to customize it. And what was crazy to me is that when I started to speak with, subject matter experts about this, and when I started to speak with people who are, at Google working on these assistants, they agreed with me. They are trying to code up chatbots that will speak to their kids and give them nursery rhymes, but they didn't agree with the overall way that assistant worked.
Right.
So, and a lot of preaching goes on about they're like, oh, Alexa's bad, Siri's bad, but what are the solutions? Can
Right.
design help it rather than technology? So Project Vox for me was about saying, hey, this is how Alexa works right now. If you just made this one design change, you would be able to dramatically improve the experience without actually having to invest a bunch of money in tech. And I think that it's the power of design in its purest form to actually be like, we will fix your tech shortcomings for now. We'll stop people from shouting and screaming and swearing at their Alexas. And we'll make technology that makes people feel included and not like they're the problem. And that for me is so important.
That's great, actually.
Yeah. So this is Project Vox, and this is just the website that I created for the project. There is a wealth of research that went into this that I haven't yet documented.
Okay.
So this is the page that I made. It outlines what exactly Project Vox is and gives a bit of a snapshot of how I went about doing it. So I spoke with power users, regular and non-users of voice assistants, as well as industry experts in the fields of personal robotics and machine learning and digital anthropology. It was a 3-month project, and we had to present this in December. And I was able to conversation prototype using a software called VoiceFlow. I was able to, ship it to people who are not with me so that they could try out my voice prototype and, figure out how they felt about it. I also learned how to use SSML, or synthetic speech markup language, to actually manipulate voices and see how people felt about hearing different kinds of things. And that was with the help of Amazon Polly and the native and Google WaveNet. So the process tab simply sort of outlines the general design process that one might take. You want to identify user pain points and frustrations. You want to create preliminary sacrificial prototypes, which you then test with your users. And I guess the one curveball here is that I wanted to verify that the changes or the proposals that I was making actually could be implemented with the existing machine learning setup. Because there's no use of me trying to create a design project and it remaining purely theoretical. So the solutions that I proposed were checked, and it turns out that not only can it work, it's just revealing how it already functions. That's all we're really doing. We're just being transparent with our users. So one of the pain points is obviously misunderstanding names and accents. I think a lot of us can relate to, just being so frustrated with Alexa for not understanding that we want to turn on the light or play the radio or something. And I've got little sound clips of interactions that I had while doing user research. And then there are others, and for full information, please visit projectbox.design. Just a lot of trying to explain why people are having a negative experience and how we might be able to fix it. And then by doing this exercise, I was able to incorporate the prototypes, the voice prototypes, into videos and screens that I created for the process. Because I was giving people like a little app prototype that I'd made with the Facebook Origami, the prototyping software. Right. And I was also having them interact with the VoiceFlow prototype. And so after gleaning all of these insights, I created these videos to help during my presentation. And then I extrapolated design principles that are generally applicable to any voice assistant that is out there. So that's essentially it. And this is a bit of a breakdown of where I was coming from. So all of the big sections are pretty concise and talk about the reception that the prototype received, the key feedback, and how feasible it is. And this is a great example. In machine learning, or rather machine learning, in natural language processing, there is something called a confidence score that is allotted to words after they've been converted from speech to text.
Right.
And if your Alexa or assistant isn't sure what you say, it will often just take its most confident score, even if it isn't that much more confident about it than the second one. And then it gets it wrong, and then you're just mad.
Yeah.
And it seems ridiculous that is okay for us, that we're just okay with it messing up so much and that no one's really questioned it in a way that I've seen. And if we just let people know that, hey, the machine isn't perfect, the machine isn't artificial general intelligence, it's artificial narrow intelligence, and that it has limitations, that way people actually end up being more empathetic and they become more forgiving of this machine's mistakes. And in just opening up this black box that is AI, you end up having what is a strangely human relationship with a machine.
Right.
That isn't human enough to cheat you or human enough to deceive you, but is human enough that you don't feel frustrated in communicating with it. And I think that was the crux of this project, that not treating our users like they're stupid or treating them like they're just receivers of this technology. Instead of asking for their cooperation, let's ask for their collaboration. And then it just changes the game, I think. It really changed the way that people felt about their machines. And what the biggest reaction I was getting was, why doesn't it do this already? And I honestly still have that question. I would really like to know. I want to get this in front of the people who make these technologies and ask them this question, because, and this is a quote that I read, I wish I'd come up with it, it's not mine. Skeuomorphism is how we understood UI when screen design was just coming up. And now we have flat UI. And in the same way, we anthropomorphize voice assistants because the only other thing that speaks in the natural world are other people. What does flat UI for robots look like? And I am so excited to find that out, because I feel like if we solve this, we're going to be able to have a more Jarvis-like interaction with our voice assistants than having one like Joy from Blade Runner. Because Joy from Blade Runner, have you watched the movie Blade Runner?
Yeah.
It's confusing because he's so emotionally conflicted about Joy, right? Because she, first of all, it's very much a she.
Yeah.
It's like a person, but not really a person. Does she really care about him? Does she not? Is she just programmed to? If you have all of these doubts, you're just making you're not creating a clear mental model for your users. And I think my favorite voice assistant as represented in science fiction is TARS from Interstellar.
Nice.
Because TARS is able to not only talk about his non-humanness at all times, he is like, I have humor settings. You can affect my humor settings. You understand that I have to obey you. And that kind of explicit clarity is useful without being difficult to interact with or understand. Absolutely. And I would much rather have a future and contribute to the kind of future that builds things like that than to build these amorphous, confusing, emotional machines like Joy. And I think that's sort of where I decided to end this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also because, like you said, that instead of making the users feel like they're at fault, I feel the users would not currently might be at a place, I might be wrong, but the users might be at a place where since this is being brought out, voice technology is being brought out by big corporations like Amazon and Google. So maybe they feel that they know better, or rather than the users themselves.
No, it's 100% arrogance. I definitely do think so. And that might sound very critical, but the truth is that if you have a company that affects the lives of that many people, you need to be held accountable and responsible. And I don't mean to date this podcast. I don't know when when everyone's gonna see it, but recently, an article came out that detailed that during these times, Google had actually reduced their diversity and inclusion workforce. At a time like this, when people who are socioeconomically disadvantaged are facing the absolute brunt of what's going on in the world right now. So if we don't bake it into the technology and the design that we do, we're never going to be able to adequately address it as like a good to have or as an add-on. It needs to come from the approach that you have from the very beginning. And it's easy to think that Google doesn't care about you, but it's their job. And if they're creating these things, it's their responsibility and their job. And if they put more of this into the hands of their users to control their experience, I think I think within reason, it's a better thing, and people will feel like they will feel included. And isn't that kind of what we all want?
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And this project's amazing, actually. Like, I really hope and that this goes out and that this is implemented at as many platforms as possible. And the voice technology, like bridges that gap. That void gets filled where usability is a big issue.
I really hope so. And I'm sort of just going into this funk of trying to get the word out there to try and ally with, for example, AI Now, the AI Now Institute for addressing social bias in AI. And a lot of these institutes, they don't want someone who is just, a designer. They want someone who's an anthropologist or a sociologist or someone with a data science background. But I think that just goes to show that we don't think about the capability of design in that way, because it can solve it. It really can. And an example that is tangible rather than just a principle, I think will help move that in a good direction. Which is why when every single person in my class created a product, a physical digital product.
Right.
And I was like, I will never be able to create a perfect thing in 3 months. So I'm going to try to create something that actually has real world relevance, even if it's just a provocation.
I'm pretty sure this is going to be very provocative and that this is going to be amazing. Like, can't wait for this to just reach like as many people as possible. So also, Gaana, getting back to your experience at CIID, can you tell us more about like another project of yours, that is the Immersive AR project?
Yeah, I have a Medium article about that. Should I pull that up?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So this is a project that we did over the course of 2 weeks. This was Immersive Experiences, which was facilitated by James Tickner and Joshua Walton, both of Oculus. And it was one of my favorite projects to do just because we got to mess around in Unity and create fun VR experiences through our phones. So messy AR is something that one of the instructors had said previously in the week. It was around how if you created a VR experience, unlike the real world, there are lots of straight edges. There's lots of clean lines. Everything is quite sterile in a way. And in the real world, where sterility and that sort of minimal aesthetic is interesting, it's like whenever you can achieve it, it's cool. But in the virtual world, where that's the default, it's kind of not that cool. So he liked the idea of messy AR, and this just came up in conversation. And I realized that when it came to technology that we like and are nostalgic about, it like a PlayStation 1 or like a Sony Walkman. Like, we love these, even though you have to kind of like slap it to get it working sometimes. And to me, that is a really messy technology, but it's still very endearing. So with this project, what my team and I wanted to do was to bring messiness into the AR experience in a charming way, but also incorporate digital and physical elements into the project. So to be brief, what we did was we took a Sony tape recorder, and because we liked the way that it makes those clicking sounds, because it's very satisfying to press those buttons.
It's more about delight.
Versus like tapping. I'm sorry?
It's a lot about providing delight to the user.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't think it was intentional delight by the makers of this technology. It was just a limitation of the technology at the time where you couldn't make more silent buttons because it's all mechanical.
Right.
Right? And we have grown to love it because we've grown with it. And so what my amazing colleague Mitsu Shah did, she wired up the buttons of this. She opened it up, took some copper tape, some wires, some solder, and she wired all of these buttons up to something called a makey makey. And a makey makey is is basically like this board that allows you to convert physical electrical impulses to keyboard input and vice versa. So if I press like the K button on my keyboard, I could affect like a circuit. But if I also press the start button on the Sony cassette recorder, I could also affect that circuit. So we went through a bunch of prototypes, and what we ended up making is something like this. There is a fiducial on the top of the cassette recorder, and the fiducial is basically what anchors the VR experience. So when your camera detects the fiducial, it will project the VR experience with relation to that one square.
Right.
And what we did was I downloaded a video from Adult Swim, and we made a virtual player that is controlled by these physical buttons.
Nice.
So this is a little GIF of me figuring out how to convert the keystrokes to the up motion of the little white ball that you see there.
Right.
So the camera is running Unity. We're going through something called Space Brew. There's a lot of like cloud stuff going on. And yeah, this was like one of the first things that we did. It was great. And then finally, this is like me in my room, just trying to figure out what to make the the VR experience look like. And this is the Unity setup. And the fiducial is the stone thing at the bottom.
Nice.
So finally, when you put it all together, we created a video player that you could see in VR, played this really wacky video that you could start and stop and adjust the volume for through the physical cassette recorder. And it was amazing. This was just the favorite project for a lot of people. This was the favorite course for a lot of people because of obvious reasons. VR is pretty sick and dope. And I do have a full video of a video documenting the final experience.
Yeah, I've seen the video. Everyone should be seeing this. Go to the Medium article and see this video and view the project. It was super cool. And
I think it's fun.
Exactly. It looks really cool, and it's like everything that you imagined, actually implementing it and doing it, it gives a different kind of like excitement and relief, I feel. Not relief, actually, more like really like pure happiness.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you're like, I'm not trying to make a product, I'm not trying to sell the product, I'm just trying to learn and have fun. And
Right.
that's why I think the college experience is so valuable, because you don't really get to do that outside of college as much, I would say. But yeah, definitely a fave.
Also, Ghana, I wanted to ask, having experience in both self-taught and design program backgrounds, what nuances do you feel designers of both backgrounds lack?
That's a great question. So when you're self-taught, I think you have that great hustle mindset of there's nothing that I can't achieve. I don't need to be spoon-fed the information or the mechanics to do this. I'll freaking Google it or I'll YouTube it and I'll figure it out.
Right.
Which I think people from a traditional background lack. As a self-taught designer going into school, the shortcomings that I felt that I had was that I did not know how to properly document and present my process. I just assumed that a good design should be self-explanatory. And it's not always the case, especially when you're trying to explain a project that you've worked on for a week in a very short amount of time. And in the real world, that's probably all the time you're going to get to have to explain something that you care about. And I guess another thing is that it provides you academic rigor. You don't get to let yourself off the hook. There is another force out there making you get into the habit of this. And some people really need that. For me and documentation, I needed that. I wasn't going to be able to learn that on my own. But it also, another thing that I suppose grew as a result of being in school was teamwork, collaboration, specifically because we were collaborating with people who were like from non-design backgrounds trying to do design, and you're just trying to suppress those parts of your brain that are like, you should know this already, and just try your best to be clear in your communication and polite in your collaboration and still come up with something that you're proud of at the end of the day. And because we live in this bit of an echo chamber in the industry where you're only working with like-minded people, often you don't feel like there is any scope to, or there's any need to talk to people who aren't like you. But college brings that. It's built into it. And it pushes your boundaries in ways that you would never have imagined. It also leads to a lot of burnout, at least CIID did. So I work 4 days a week for Rune because I wanted to spend those other 3 days doing personal projects and really developing on what I learned in school. But until the beginning of May, I wasn't able to do that because I was just running nonstop. I was bouncing around between countries and my job with my job, and it wasn't possible. So that is a thing that people should maybe keep in mind, that it is intense, it is wonderful, but it does not last, but it does have long-lasting effects. So like, take care of yourself out there, homie. It turned into a weird, segue about mental health, but like, it's the 4 months that came after school were in a lot of ways as much of a learning experience as the last 4 months of school.
That's great. Also, like you said, this was the aspect of what your journey was at CIID, right? And you mentioned what self-taught designers lack. What are some of the things that design graduates miss out on, or do not pay much attention to when it comes to self-taught designers, apart from hustle?
Honestly, I feel like hustle is the biggest part of it, but also because you learn, the mindset is completely different. So when you are in design school, it's like, it's okay, you're learning. Your idea has merit because you thought of it and you put work into it, and it's good for those reasons. The real world doesn't work like that. So you cannot afford to be disillusioned that way, because the world is much harsher, and for a good reason, because the world wants to pay you for what you can do. In school, you're paying to be taught. And if it's not nice to you, then there's something wrong. And so, like, especially in the beginning, when for the first 6 months, like, I had a reputation in school for being extremely critical and harsh, just because I was like, this isn't going to work. I have built products before. This is not going to work. You're never going to be able to sell this. And it was a fault of mine then. And then CID softened me. And now I find myself looking back at that and being like, you know what? I had a point. It wasn't the right time to say it, though. And so this ability to actually test the market and to know functionally what's good, what can sell, what people need. Because design school is a great place to come up with like some weird abstract concept that, is about mental healing and peace and all of that stuff, but isn't really ever going to work for people. And people will still be like, hey, this is nice. I'm guilty of making those projects. I don't regret it. And the game is just different. So it's just knowing
Okay.
better.
Yeah, that's actually really nice, because now that for all the viewers, it would create a clear, hopefully, and I think it would create a clear distinction of to help them decide what they want out of their design journey, and what requirements do they want, and whether enrolling into a design program will satisfy, and if it doesn't, what other alternatives should they look for?
100%. And the thing is about a post-COVID world and design education is that the game has changed. Nothing that you expected out of a college experience is going to be the same. And if you can be a self-taught designer if you were a self-taught designer, everyone else is going to try to figure out how you did what you do. So you're at even more of an advantage right now. And as far as design education goes, you can be as good without going to college. I wouldn't say that it's for you developing your skills necessarily. It's for developing discipline. And if you already have discipline, and if you're good at networking, I don't know if design school is going to give you everything that you were looking for. Maybe you already have it and you just need to work on it, or you need to simply upskill in the ways that you think is nice.
Yeah.
You're not losing out. You're not losing out by not going to school.
Hmm. Also, Gaana, culminating everything that we've discussed, if I had to ask you, what are your top three learnings in your entire design journey so far? What would they be?
Hmm, that's interesting. Um, I think it's that, and this is just a recent sort of realization of mine, that if you try to make design that impresses other people, that's fine. But if you are constantly dissatisfied with your own work and trying to improve, that's where you're going to get your fulfillment from. It sounds so cliche, and I understand this, but it just comes from personal reflection, in that if I look at Dribble and I'm like, oh, my visual design skills are not up to the mark, it would make me not want to necessarily, earlier it would make me want to post on Dribble more and get more likes. But now I'd say, hey, I just admire this person for their skills, and I would like to learn from them, and I would like to grow, and I would actually like to do what they're doing or something like it. And just being able to learn is what gives me joy. Being able to execute and see the results is something else. But the opportunity to create is something that shouldn't be taken lightly. And it's a fulfilling process in itself. So yeah, creation is fun. Um, Another one is that please don't think that you don't have to know how code works. You don't have to code, but you need to know how code works. It just makes life easy for you. And lastly, be nice to other people. It's weird that it came through the lens of like design, but just because I would really be very critical, I think, of the work of others, especially not just randomly, but in the way that pertained to me. Being like, no, it's clearly XYZ reason that you're wrong. And as soon as you give people the space to shine creatively, you will end up with a better product at the end of the day than you could have achieved on your own. And I just think that there's great value in being kind to yourself and to others.
Empathy plays a big role.
Yeah, it is empathy. It's 100% empathy. It's not just for your users, but the people who are making what you do. Because if someone did your job, they would, everything's the same, it would still feel different because everyone comes from a different place. And who you work with and the way you work and everything matters just as much as the output. So yeah, those are definitely the three things that I've learned.
These are great insights. Dana, for someone who wants to get started in design, what advice would you give to that person?
Okay, can I plug my fiance's like situation?
Sure.
Okay, well, Abhinav Chikara, I don't know if you've heard of him, has an amazing course coming up. Please go to 10K Designers and figure out what he's up to, because not only is he's an accomplished practitioner, he has a way of inspiring you to find your own inspiration. And I think that is a thing that I have personally benefited from, not because he's ever told me, but just because of being around him and the way that he operates. And if anyone can benefit from like a small slice of that, I think that they would go a long way. In terms of design education, I just feel like read and don't read everything. Reading everything is not good. Find what you like and read that. Find people you love, figure out how they work, talk to them, and support one another. That's, I think, a great way to just feel like, hey, this is not this scary, crazy thing that I can't break into. It's simply another hurdle I can overcome to bring me the happiness and the skills that I want.
Right.
Never stop learning. If you like something, let someone know. I think that's huge. And practice and don't give up. And you're gonna suck. And then you're gonna get better. But you have to suck. It's a rule that you have to suck. Yeah.
That's great. Also, Rana, one thing that I've come across a lot is that there is a shortage of female designers. I not just globally, like I'm like globally for sure, but especially in design as well. So how do you feel? How do you think, or like that this disparity or this imbalance in the ratio can be increased or can be improved?
See, that's a tricky one because it may be that right now we're talking about the gender imbalance in the context of design, but it's not something that's limited to design. And I find that having been a female person who designs has not been of either a strength or has not been either a strength or a weakness. It's just been an incident. But I recognize that that is because I came from a background that allowed me to not have to think about gender because I come from a privileged background where I got an education just as the same as I would have if I was a guy. But when it comes to convincing those who have control over your life at the point where you make this decision, be it parents, be it the socioeconomic conditions in which you are, I think what's important is to talk about how design is a viable financial career. That is something that's important, that people out there want this, that people out there will pay for it, and that investing in it is a responsible decision for your future. Because that is something that, because in India, and maybe this is just me looking at extremes, we're very much thinking about how we're going to have a stable career if you go to IIT, IIM, and then you're going to be fine, and then everything is going to work out in your life. And then you're seen as subverting the expectation if you don't do this. But the truth is that a lot more people don't go to IIT than they do. And for women especially, trying to make it out on their own seems a little bit less of a sure thing. And I just, if there's anything that the like women listening to this might want to take away from it, is that this is one of the fields where being creative, being empathetic, being very feminine is a strength. It is an absolute strength, and your users will feel it.
Right.
If you are given the opportunity to really shine in the way that you do. It's not about being a female designer, it's about being a female who designs. And to bring the strengths of your character to this, I think all you need is to be given the opportunity. And I just hope that more people give women opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Also, one thing that I've realized in my college experience, for example, is that a lot of girls feel that because they cannot code, or they cannot, they should, maybe it's not right for them to be a part of, like, should not be a women in tech. But whereas something that should be propagated more and emphasized more on is that even if they do not code, being a designer and being a part of different fields that also means that they are a woman in tech.
Yeah, 100%. Like,
Yeah.
it's weird to me that like a lot of especially Indian designers are engineer turned designers because engineering is so often seen as our default. And even myself coming into this, I was like, I have an arts background. I feel like I'm gonna have to work like twice as hard for half the credit. It was not so, because engineering is a skill that other people can do, but communication and fine art is definitely what you can do better than anyone else if you explore that.
For sure.
You don't need to know how to, again, I don't know how to, I couldn't code a thing, but I know how it works. And I think that is, if you feel like your brain can operate logically, if you feel like you can follow a process, a scientific method, and just want to create nice stuff, design is maybe the place where you would be at home. Engineering is fantastic, enables us greatly, but is not everything.
That's great advice. That's a great statement actually. And this brings us to the end of our interview. Thank you so much, Gaana. This was great. It was great having you, and everything from talking about voice technology and its the imbalance to your experience at CIID, and also about what the gender disparity is and how it can be improved. Great insights. Loved your thought process, and can't wait for everyone to see this.
Thank you so much. It's been really nice. I mean, I think you've picked like a winner of a podcast format just because everyone loves to talk about themselves. So I certainly had a great time talking about myself.
Thanks for listening to this episode, and I hope you liked it. If you watched the entire video, drop a comment below saying discipline is the top requirement to learn any skill to let us know. Subscribe to the Whiteboard.fm YouTube channel to check out other episodes and clips from this interview. This podcast is a part of the 10K Designers Network. You can check out other projects on 10kdesigners.com.